Hello everybody and welcome back to Victoria 3, where we are currently waiting out our truce with the Great Sioux Nation in order to colonize this little bit of Minnesota. And we want to get at that very, very quickly if we can. So we know that that truce is up when? In 91, I think? Let's double check that. Yeah, so 7 February 1891. Sounds good. We're also in the process of bringing up our standard of living, and I've looked into this a little bit. I think that the reason still comes down to wealth levels. So this is probably due to taxation levels, is my guess. My question is, we've already dropped our raw taxation level down, right? This already basically halved our taxation level. If we were to drop our consumption taxes, my question is, how much of an effect would this have? Now, that was actually more than I expected this to be. This was saying that this was going to be minus 400 or so, but I can deal with minus 89 for now. I want to see how much of an effect that has. This is just a temporary experiment here. Minus 120? Okay, sure. That's fine. For now, this is the main question. So, we'll give this a couple of weak ticks and give it a moment. A boiler explosion. Okay, that's fine. So, at this point, checking in on this standard of living. It is still trending downward. So I think, well, it's starting to even out a little bit. But it's still trending downward. So I think that this is probably a misdiagnosis then. It's probably a mixture of things. So we know that cultural acceptance... Let's see, what does this actually do? It determines the acceptance status, and these are the current statuses. So the current status is 1, violent hostility. So that reduces their qualifications and their wage. Okay, so that's probably a big, big part of this. Okay, so reducing the wage by 30% for violent hostility is significant. We're going to want to bring up the cultural status here for sure, or get them assimilated, one or the other. So if that is indeed the issue, then I would expect dropping those taxes to help, and it has a little bit. Indeed, it has a little bit. So that's definitely noted. We'll see what happens with cultural exclusion here. This is still in hard RNG territory, and it hasn't been going so well, but maybe it goes better now. We'll see. So it's 1888 for now. That looks good. And our population is cruising upward. We do need to address that standard of living. Debate success? Okay, so we're back up to 16% success chance anyway. So that's absolutely fine. At this point, what we really need to do is we do need to be addressing the standard of living. It's a little hard to read the current direction here. I think it's trending up, though. Yes, it is definitely trending up. So I think getting rid of those consumption taxes was significant. So I think then that I did correctly read it. It's just that cutting the taxes in half wasn't enough. Okay, we are paying a little bit of welfare now, too. Noted. That's fine. It's absolutely a-okay. So we're running a very small deficit right now. That's understood. And we do have a bunch of extra authority. So with that in mind, do we want to do any decrees here? Promoting national values would increase assimilation and conversion. That's definitely a very interesting option. We could also run a... potentially, like, emergency relief, but I don't think we even can do this. No, we can't do that. So we could run promoting national values, and it's specifically saying that we can only set those in Michigan and Minnesota. That's going to double our assimilation rates in those areas, so that seems reasonably fine. Then we could run some of these encourage industries. So this would be like resource industry, possibly in Wisconsin. What are we producing here right now? We have 3 logging camps, we have a motor industry, and a maize farm. So we're going to be best off probably to put in a resource industry here. In Illinois, we've got 4 agriculture levels, and that's kind of it. So we would then want to put in an agricultural industry there. Over here, we've got agricultural as well. Okay, that looks good. So we would put in agriculture industry there. In Ohio, what do we got going on? In Ohio, there's not actually all that much production occurring here. So I think I'm not going to put anything at all there. And then I'm going to go over to Michigan, and I'm also going to put in... Hang on, this is wrong. I'm going to also put in encourage resource industry in Michigan. So this is going to have both, like that. Okay, that should boost our throughputs, and that brings us back positive. Excellent. And our standard of living is still trending upward. We'll see if it's trending upward enough. So at this point, I'm interested in assimilation rates. So can we see what the assimilation rate of these Bulgarians is? It might be better seen in here, potentially. Let's see. Assimilation is at 125%. Okay. So we will see if the population of Bulgarians drops over time. It's at 56.7k. And yeah, I'm keeping an eye on our current financial situation. That's understood. But I'm just watching this number here right now and seeing if that number is going up or down. As of right now, it's a little hard to tell. It just went to 33.8, then back down to 33.7, 56.6. Okay. So the number appears to be going down. Good. And our standard of living is coming up. Excellent. Law debate failure. Okay, sure. So at this point, our GDP per capita needs to come up a little bit more. No doubt about that. And we need to have our standard of living come up more. We're working on it. Our standard of living is coming up nicely. Our GDP per capita has a little ways to go. So that seems fine for the moment. And we're going to need to grow a little bit here, although it's not going to need to be much. We're going to need to grow a little bit in order to get ourselves into positive financial situations at this current taxation level. So that's understood. We should have this assimilation happen eventually, although it appears to be quite slow. We're still at 56.6. Okay. And hopefully we'll pass cultural exclusion, but we're not rolling well on that. So we've got other irons in the fire on that front. So that looks good for now. I'm wondering about the GDP of each of these locations. Okay. I am going to drop the... hang on. I'm going to drop the agriculture throughput here. So we're going to cancel that, and we're going to do a resource industry up in Minnesota. That should be a little bit more useful for us. It's like triple the GDP, right? So that seems good. We've also got one here in Indiana. I'm not too concerned about that. That seems reasonably fine for the time being. So everything looks okay there. Our standard of living is kind of plateauing around 9.2. Okay. So if we check in on our overall view here, we can see we've dropped down to 17.6 of their income on taxes. And they pay an average of plus 18.2%. So fish is a little high, clothes are a little high, opium is a little high. Understood. And we stalled. Okay, so this is going to be a setback. I'm surprised it hasn't setbacked yet. Are we just sitting exactly at 0? Maybe. Apparently. But yeah, we're rolling poorly on cultural exclusion. So that's fine for the moment. Like I said, we have another iron in the fire, that being oil discovered in Ohio. Oh. Okay. And yes, here it is. So we need to take a setback there. We'll see what happens with that. It's probably not going to happen. But over here in Michigan, we're at 56.2k Bulgarians. Okay, so they're definitely assimilating over. That looks good. So we're going to be working on that for a little while here. And oil was discovered over here. The question is oil actually valuable right now? Well, we can't build oil extraction. So for the moment, that's not a thing. And it might have been in this section of Ohio. We don't know. So for now, that seems reasonably fine. And our standard of living is actually still creeping upwards, so that looks good. But we've definitely got some work to do on that. So checking in on our earning of recognition, our GDP per capita and standard of living are both rough. Our standard of living is likely going to remain that way for a while. Our GDP per capita could be pretty close in theory. So that's definitely noted. No doubt about that. So let's see what happens with this cultural exclusion roll. We're rolling very, very badly on it thus far, and it's just RNG. We're not necessarily surprised one way or another with this. This was always completely random how this was going to do, and it's doing poorly. So we failed the debate again. We're probably not going to pass this at this point. I give this probably about that 6% chance of actually succeeding. It's not great. Not great at all. So it's currently 1888. It's December of 1888. So we're going to be interested in colonizing the Great Sioux Nation in Minnesota here very, very soon. No doubt about that. We're very slightly positive financially at this point, and our GDP is okay. I'd definitely like to see that continue to grow a lot, but for the moment, there's not too much that we can do about that other than hope to bring up our standard of living, right? And a lot of this is, I think, really being dragged down by Bulgarian pops. There's also Illinois over here where we have, I think, a different problem. My question is, what problem is that? Well, I think the issue here is just that the GDP here is so much lower. So the GDP is 38.9K. Yeah, I think we need some sort of resource extraction in each of these three states. This is probably going to mean a logging camp in each of them. So let's take a look here. 0.61 in Minnesota, but no. Yeah, nothing there. And then, yeah, so logging camps. So we can do something like that. I don't want the 2 in Indiana here. We can do that. Ohio is back to being inefficient. Okay, noted. So we hit another stall here. This is, you know, this is going to fail now. 100%. This is failed. So this isn't shocking. We knew that that would likely happen. We're just waiting for it to actually fail. We could actually just cancel it. This is failed. So this will just start the timer a little bit faster. So that seems fine. And now what are we interested in for a law change, since we apparently can't go that route? That's reasonably fine. We could think about... Honestly, our laws are kind of okay outside of that. I'd really like to change our citizenship laws, but we just can't. We rolled too badly, and that's okay. That's absolutely fine for right now. There's nothing we can change to here. We could maybe change off of interventionism and try to go to laissez-faire. That's potentially interesting. That's definitely potentially interesting, but it would force privatization. I mean, we're already basically doing this anyway. We can try it. We don't have anything else to go for, so let's see what happens. Okay, 40 and 53. This is a very polarizing thing, and it's kind of unlikely that it happens. But any advances that we get out of this will pretty much come out of the stall chance. So we'll see what happens with that, but I'm really not going to be surprised if this fails. That's okay. So with that in mind, let's check in on the Michigan number of Bulgarians, and the answer is 55.7K. So they're definitely assimilating. We've assimilated about 1.2K of them, and that is going to be helping our standard of living across the board, but that's a slow process. No doubt about that. That's a very, very slow process. So with that in mind, we do have a private construction happening in Wisconsin. We're expanding the logging camps here. And the real question is, okay, yeah, we can definitely put more workers into that. We don't have any in our motor industry. I'm not shocked about that necessarily at this point. We do have 1.31K peasants, and my question is where? Minnesota is the answer. Okay. So that's understood. I'd really like it then if they'd build a logging camp in Minnesota or an iron mine up here. We have iron mine availability. They can actually work here if they want. So these are probably, yeah, we can see here, qualifications X. So this is probably Bulgarian pops that are peasants because they are in the violent hostility status here. So that means that they have minus 50% qualifications and minus 30% wage. So that's not great for them, for sure. We'd like to bring those numbers up, for sure. But let's see what happens. Our numbers have gotten a little better on laissez-faire as we've gone through this phase. So let's see how we roll. This is still pretty hard RNG, to be clear. We're slightly higher chance of a good roll. But it's pretty RNG here. So we will see what happens. We're now making 105 pounds a week, so that's, you know, something anyway. But let's see here. 2 days, 1 day, and stalled. Okay. So what do we get here? Is this a good stall? We could take a setback. That's a theoretical thing that we can do. Sure. I don't love it, but it will reduce the phase duration a little bit. I was hoping that this would be a stall that would gain us success chance, but alas, no. So yeah, that was not a great situation there, that's for sure. But for now, I'm interested in keeping an eye on our finances here. So we've currently got a very small income, right? We did get joint stock companies unlocked, so that's neat. I don't think we can establish companies. So attainable companies, what are we interested in? Well, definitely wood production. I don't think any of these are currently available, but let's see here. What would this be? If we went for like some sort of a logging, yeah, forestry consortium. So that would need to have 5 levels available in Michigan. So over here in Michigan, we've currently got 8, but I think some of these are privatized. So how many levels are privatized here? Owned by manor houses, owning 50%, financial districts owning 37%, and the financial districts owning 1. So all of these are owned by not us. And I think that's the reason why we can't establish that company. Okay. Well, we're creeping up on 900K for our GDP, so that's looking solid, and our standard of living is slowly rising. We're up to 9.7, so that's looking good. We definitely need to bring those numbers up, but that is also going to be improving our pop growth rate. So that is good too. We're up to almost 14K annual, and we're about to pass 500,000 pops. So that's looking great as well. Checking in on Minnesota, if we look at the number of Bulgarians, we're down to 55.3K. They are definitely assimilating over to Algonquin, so that looks great. So I do want to get some construction going here, eventually. But in our financial situation, as it is right now, it's not fantastic, right? No doubt about that. I feel like we need to remain in our current financial situation for standard of living purposes. So if we check in here, we can see, yeah, this is still rough, but we're actually pretty close on the GDP per capita. We're up to 58 at this point. So that's absolutely noted. We're going to be finishing up this logging camp in Wisconsin, like, right now. So that looks good. That's now finished. Excellent. And how much is in our investment pool? I sure wish we could spend this. Let's see what happens with laissez-faire here on this kick. Stall again. Oof. Okay, so we're rolling badly on it. This was pure RNG, whether this was going to happen, but we're having some bad luck on these last couple of bills. We'll see. Maybe this turns around, but I doubt it. Unfortunately for us, that went from success to stall. So that's very unlikely at this point. That was a bad roll. Very sad. Well, we have crested the 900K GDP marker, so that's nice. And we're up to 9.8 for our standard of living now. So we are still struggling on the standard of living, but we are trending upward on this, and that's looking good. I really do think that a big amount of it, at least in these 2 states, has to do with the number of Bulgarians, and that is now being reduced. So that seems fine. Down here in Illinois, I think that the issue is really just the GDP sucks. I think that's all there is to it. Our GDP in Illinois is awful. We can see that tobacco is incredibly cheap, and I mean, we're producing almost nothing out of these maize farms. So that's the core issue there. Great Britain is enforcing military access in something here. I guess it's out over here. Okay, we don't really care about that. We can't participate anyway. So if we were to build this logging camp, we'd want to build the one in Illinois first. So we'd do something kind of like this. But we're short on funds, for sure. Temporarily, we could think about boosting up our tax levels. This would be painful for our standard of living, but it would be good for our construction, which long-term might be the right way to go. So I'm going to do that. I'm expecting this to tank our standard of living. Yeah, you can see there, it turned red. That's fully expected. We're going to bank up some gold reserves here. And we're going to begin this construction fairly soon. Yeah, we stalled again here. This is not going to happen at this point. Almost certainly. So we're going to resume this construction right now, in fact. And this is going to be 10 weeks. I'm thinking even about going into debt on this to get that done. I really want to get a job done in Illinois. So this would be 8 weeks at this level. So we would be at 6 weeks. That'd be like 24K in debt. That's a fair amount of debt, but getting this built would be potentially huge for getting Illinois turned around. Our standard of living is definitely tanking, and it's tanking fast, and that's understood. This is not surprising. I'm actually going to pause here, and we're going to come back out of debt. We got almost halfway done there, and what is going on here? Industrialists are petitioning it to pass tenant farmers. No, we're not passing tenant farmers. And we've got cross-border investments. Sure. Actually, invest domestically. Manufacturing tax income. Not that we have much manufacturing tax income. So that's fine for now. We're going to make our way out of the debt that we built up here. And let's take this up to, I don't know, around 20K or so, and then finish out the logging camp in Illinois. That's the idea here. Falling in line. Okay. So the Petit Bourgeoisie are joining the United Indian Brotherhood, potentially. And they oppose Great Britain. Sure. Seems reasonably fine. So we're going to be officially out of debt in the next week or two. Yes, I'm watching our standard of living tank. That's absolutely understood. But this is an investment in future standard of living. So we'll just build up our gold reserves a little bit here. Oil discovered in the West Indies, sure. Okay, let's build this up to, I think, about 10K, and then we'll finish off this logging camp in Illinois. So that'll be fine for now, and then we're going to drop our taxes back down to bring our standard of living back up. So we're taking the temporary hit here in order to drastically boost the GDP in our worst performing state by far, Illinois. Actually, Ohio is our worst performing state, but it's only a partial state, and it's only got 7K population. The GDP per capita here is not too bad, in theory. So we're up to about 10K now. Let's give it this week tick. And let's construct. Okay, so this is going to be 6 weeks. Understood. We will go a little bit into debt to do this. But let's get this logging camp finished. That looks good, and then we'll cut taxes. So 5 weeks on that. That will significantly help this. Keep in mind, Indiana, and yeah, this stalled again. I'm not shocked about that at this point. Keep in mind, Indiana is primarily getting its money from, like, our government administration in this university, right? This is where the majority of the population in Indiana is working. So that's understood. And yes, this is understood. This actually went back to the default. If we roll really, really well here, this isn't dead. We'll see what happens with that, but that'll be interesting for sure. Okay, finishing up that logging camp in Illinois, and now we're pausing. We're going to need to cut taxes down to, like, this level again. I'm going to do that slowly over time. So we're going to put it here, and we're going to need to work on paying off this debt, but I'm not too concerned about that right now. So we'll give it a week at this level. I'll give it 2. And then we'll cut it back down to here. We'll still be slightly positive. So we'll cut it to here. We can't afford to cut it back down to here at this point. That's okay. So for right now, I want to check in on this logging camp. Yeah, we're starting to hire in. Excellent. So we've got 90 people working here right now. Sure, that looks good. That looks good for now. I'm hoping to see this standard of living start to improve over here in Illinois now that they have another type of job available. So we'll see if that ends up happening, and I believe we can now cut our taxes down to here. Excellent. And we should see our standard of living beginning to go back up. For the moment, of course, we're actually pushing up close to 1 million on our GDP. That was a big spike. I like it. Is this because of this construction in Illinois? Surely not. This isn't producing all that much. This is only 135 people working here right now. But okay, we're definitely driving the GDP up here, so that looks good. That looks very, very good. The next state that I'd like to do this in is actually in Ohio, so we can do something like that, but the main issue, of course, is finances. But it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we are going to continue to work on maybe passing laissez-faire, probably not, we will see. You can, oh, we just ticked up a lot in our standard of living. This just went up to an average of 10.3, so that is a big, big jump. I like it. We're also high up enough in our GDP per capita that we're actually getting some progress here. Beautiful. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.